July 1945. The sun beats down mercilessly on the dusty fields of central Texas, where the air shimmers with heat rising from the earth. Rows of barbed wire enclosures stretch across the landscape, guarding thousands of men in faded gray uniforms. Inside one compound, a group of captured German soldiers gathers near the fence. Their faces gaunt from months of captivity, yet softened by an unexpected routine. An American truck pulls up, its engine rumbling to a halt. Soldiers unload crates, and soon the familiar hiss of bottle caps echoes in the stillness. Ice-cold Coca-Cola, beaded with condensation, is passed through the wire-one bottle for each prisoner, as it has been for weeks now. This moment, repeated across hundreds of American prisoner-of-war camps housing over 400,000 Germans, marked a quiet turning point in the waning days of the Second World War. By mid-1945, as Allied forces swept through Europe and the Pacific, the United States had become the custodian of vast numbers of enemy combatants. Camps sprang up from the coasts of California to the farms of the Midwest and the plains of the South. In these facilities, adhering strictly to the Geneva Convention, the U.S. Army provided rations that met or exceeded international standards. 3 substantial meals daily, including meat, vegetables, bread, and coffee. Yet beyond mere sustenance, American policy extended a deliberate gesture of abundance. Each prisoner received, alongside his rations, a bottle of Coca-Cola. The origins of this practice traced back to 1941, when Robert Woodruff, president of the Coca-Cola Company, declared that every American serviceman should have access to the drink for 5 cents, no matter the cost or location. As the war escalated, the company dispatched technical observers, civilian experts in uniform to establish 64 bottling plants near front lines worldwide. Over 5 billion bottles were produced and distributed to U.S. troops, turning Coca-Cola into a symbol of home and morale. When the tide turned and German prisoners flooded into American hands, the same logistical network extended its reach inland. Ration policies explicitly included the soft drink for POS, a decision rooted in both humanitarian compliance and subtle psychological strategy. German soldiers, steeped in years of propaganda, portraying America as a decadent, materialistic foe, arrived expecting brutality or neglect. Many had endured harsh conditions on the Eastern Front or in retreating Wehrmacht units, where shortages of food and fuel were commonplace. Nazi ideology had drilled into them visions of a ruthless enemy, yet they encountered barracks with beds, regular showers, medical care, canteens stocked with luxuries unimaginable under the Reich. Historical records from camps in Arkansas, Wisconsin, and Texas document prisoners' astonishment upon first tasting ice cream or receiving chocolate bars. But the recurring emblem of this contrast was the bottle of Coca-Cola, chilled, effervescent, freely given. One former prisoner, Gunter Gerwe, captured in Normandy in 1944 and held at Fort Lewis in Washington, later recalled standing before the camp commissary, debating whether to spend his allotted scrip on ice cream or Coca-Cola. In letters and interviews decades afterward, he described the moment as revelatory. Ample portions, no hunger, and treats that evoked a world of plenty. Similar accounts abound in post-war testimonies. English-speaking posts arriving in New Jersey gazed in disbelief at stockpiles of the drink, one remarking that they were surprised to find Coca-Cola even in captivity. In southern camps during scorching summers, the sight of ice-cold bottles on hot days silenced groups of hardened veterans. Men who had marched through snow and mud, who had known only ersatz coffee and meager bread, held the glistening green glass in trembling hands. Some could not speak at first, overwhelmed by the simple act of kindness. Amid defeat, this emotional contrast struck at the core of their worldview. Propaganda ministers like Joseph Goebbels had derided American culture as shallow, yet here was tangible evidence of industrial capacity and generosity. Prisoners expected retribution for the atrocities committed under the regime they served. Instead, they received treatment that highlighted the ideological chasm. Factual reports from the U.S. Army's Provost Marshal General noted low escape attempts and high compliance among German POWs, attributing this partly to the humane conditions that fostered reflection. Re-education programs, screened films, and distributed reading materials But the daily reality's full plates and cold drinks did more to undermine lingering loyalties. For many, the transformation began subtly with that first sip. The fizz. On the tongue, the sweetness cutting through dust and heat symbolized something larger, an abundance born not of conquest, but of production and freedom. Coca-Cola, mass-produced yet personally delivered, embodied American democracy's promise of plenty for the common man. Prisoners who had known ration cards, black markets, and forced labor now witnessed a system where even enemies were fed well. Documented quotes from repatriated Germans reveal shifts in perception. One Luftwaffe pilot, upon release, admitted the camps had shown him a different America than the one painted by Berlin broadcasts. Another, in a 1946 interview, confessed that the regular supply of Coca-Cola and ice cream eroded his faith in National Socialism's superiority. As the war ended and prisoners were repatriated, most by 1946, these experiences lingered. Many returned to a devastated Germany where cities lay in ruins and food remained scarce under occupation. The memory of those chilled bottles on sweltering days became a touchstone, a quiet acknowledgement that the victors had won not only militarily, but morally. Some former posts later emigrated to the United States, drawn by the land that had treated them with unexpected dignity. Others, in rebuilding the Federal Republic, carried forward lessons of humanity gleaned from barbed wire enclosures. In the end, that ice-cold Coca-Cola, passed without fanfare on a hot summer day in 1945, whispered a profound truth. It spoke of a nation's confidence in its way of life, abundant, open, resilient enough to extend grace even to the vanquished. In a world scarred by ideology's extremes, it reminded that freedom's greatest strength lies not in deprivation imposed on others, but in the shared possibility of refreshment, of renewal, of a cooler dawn after the longest night. The bottle, simple and iconic, endured as a vessel of that larger hope, that from the ashes of conflict, humanity might yet choose plenty over scarcity, compassion over cruelty, and the quiet fizz of life over silence.